Hi guys, welcome back to Taylor Talks Trades. In this week's episode, we are with the Global Thought Leader of the Year, Andrew Morrison from AM Bid. He's given us some top tips on how to write bids and win tenders. He's also gone over his journey in successfully selling his business and how his new business can help you do the same. I hope you enjoy. Hi Andrew, welcome to Taylor Talks Trades.
Thanks very much. Great to be here, Jamie.
Now, I usually start with my guests and I'll say, how did you get into the trades? But today, the purpose is getting you on is I know that you're a big player in the bidding world, and I'm going to get you to give us some tender advice and bidding, winning tips and all of that great stuff. So I'll probably start with, how did you get into bidding rather than how did you get into the trades?
Yeah, well, bidding's my second career, Jamie. My first career was actually in social housing, and a lot of it was very near here. So great to be in West Lothian, because I worked for West Lothian Council for 9 years.
Yep.
And sort of rose up through the ranks there, you know, from being housing officer to housing manager to, becoming more of a senior manager. And I then moved to City of Edinburgh Council, and a little bit of West Lothian, and certainly when I was at Edinburgh, I was involved in putting contracts out to tender.
Yeah.
Sitting on commissioning panels, deciding what the specification was going to be, marking the bids, interviewing the suppliers, helping make decisions about who was going to get the contracts. And then a West London-based company sort of headhunted me and said, would I consider crossing over to the other side and working on the bid side.
Wow, that's interesting. And then, so you were basically, during that period, you were gathering all the things that would later make you be able to see that from the other side then?
Yeah, I think it was very helpful to have been on the client side first of all, and to have a clear understanding of what they were looking for. And then that helped me when I moved on to the bidder side of things I think a common mistake a lot of bidders write is they just write all about their own company.
Uh-huh.
And actually the client wants you to write about them.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about, say, Edinburgh or West Lothian as examples, Edinburgh's not all just Princes Street and the Royal Mile.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other edgier neighbourhoods there as well. Yeah. And they would want you to show that you understand the full city. Mm-hmm. With West Lothian, it is, an area of towns, villages, rural areas. It's not all the same. It's not all Livingston. There's the other towns and villages as well.
Absolutely.
So writing in a way that shows how you could deliver services to their full area.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And then how did that progress? So what was your journey? So this outfit from London, they got involved.
Yes.
Was that a London-based company that was operating up here then?
That's right. They'd won a big contract with City of Edinburgh Council to do the private sector leasing, and that was to take landlord properties, give the landlord a guaranteed rent for 5 years, and then they would manage things after that with the tenants. So I was involved in helping them win a lot of bids in different parts of the UK. So I worked there for 5 years. And then I moved to British Gas. That was an interesting one, because British Gas had actually come out of a lot of the social housing bidding.
Yeah.
They'd exited that sector in the late 90s. They weren't making enough money from it, I don't think. It wasn't commercial enough for them. Mm-hmm. And then there'd been a gap of about 15 years. They're looking to re-enter it.
Wow.
So they wanted somebody that understood social housing and bidding.
Yep.
And I kind of fitted the bill there.
Ah, good. And what was sort of different from British Gas compared to your other roles? Like, that must have been a bit different, I would say.
Yeah, well...
Like, when I think of bidding, I just don't think of British Gas, if that makes sense. Yeah. You just think of them as probably more serving homeowners, I would say. Like you said, they came away from that and then went back in.
Well, they do a lot of bidding. So they do bidding in social housing contracts. Yeah. And they actually bought a company while I was there called PH Jones.
Right.
And I was involved in integrating the PH Jones bid team into the British Gas bid teams.
Yeah.
So that they're involved in social housing, the installs of new central heating and replacement central heating, the annual gas safety check, the repairs, the emergencies, etc. But they also do a lot of commercial work. Mm-hmm. So there was commercial contracts to bid for. There was large scale energy efficiency contracts to bid for. And of course there's the energy contracts as well that are always coming up.
And then and you were integrating teams and things as well. So how did that come to you? Are you a bit of a natural born leader and you can put teams together, or did you learn on the job? How did that?
Well, I suppose actually I'd learned quite a lot of that here in West Lothian, because I ended up being the housing manager of quite a number of different housing offices here, and it involved quite a time of change as well. It was a time when we moved from having, individual specialisms with housing staff to them operating generically. So that was a big change as well, that your housing officer was responsible for the whole area, not just part of it.
I'm interested as well to see, so was it after British Gas you went out on your own, and that's when...
Well, a guilty secret is I went into British Gas knowing that I was going to set up my own business.
Right, okay.
So what I did was I very carefully built my network. One of it was LinkedIn. Built my network on LinkedIn. Big
following on LinkedIn, I see.
I do now, it's over 20,000 now. But and I do the LinkedIn Live broadcasts, of course, as well.
Very good. I've watched a good few of them.
But what I wanted with British Gas was I wanted to understand what a major contractor operated like on the bid side, and I wanted to really get an understanding of commercial matters around bidding and also contractual matters. And I learned a huge amount. I was here nearly 4 years, and I'd sucked every bit of knowledge I felt I could out of them, and it linked in very well with the Scottish Government in 2014 changing the law around public sector bidding and bringing a lot more into the ambit of public sector bidding. And I thought, well, here's my time now to actually launch a business.
And how does that, I'm just interested around the mindset of that then. How does someone get to having a sort of a plan, if you like, going, like, did you know it was going to be 5 years, or did you just think, I'm going to go in here, I've got a view, doing something on my own later, but I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can? Like, that must take quite a bit of mindset to think, lay it out like that and think that far ahead, if that makes sense. A lot of people was just kind of almost winging it as they go, try this job, see how I go on, if I don't like it, I might move. Like, that was quite strategic.
No, I do tend to be strategic. I remember in West Lothian one time, I was asked to take on the management of 3 teams. Now, most of the managers in the council manage one team, but I was said, would you take on 3 teams? And I thought, yes, but I'm taking on 3 teams to get out of here. So I'm going to do that, and then that will look good in my CV to then move into Edinburgh, because I wanted a capital cities
a good way of
on my CV. As far as British Gas, yes, I thought it would probably be 3 to 5 years there, and the right time came for me with the Scottish Government's new legislation. I also thought I'd set up the business and run it for 8 to 10 years before I sold it.
Right.
We'll probably come on to that later. But I sold it at 8 years, 9 months.
Wow. Very strategic again. That's very good. And then, so maybe the earlier days then, so AM Bid, is that where you began? So AM Bid started at this point, that was 2014 then.
That's it.
So you've left British Gas, you kind of had your plan, you've went out, you've dived into it. That's your first venture into entrepreneurialism, I guess. How did that go? Was that a big wake-up call, or was it as you expected? Or
do you know what? I think one of the things that I didn't fully understand, I suppose people will realise this if they think about it, but I didn't fully understand what it'd be like to be just me. Now remember, British Gas, I think at that point, employed about 35,000 people.
Wow.
And of course in the councils I'd been used to thousands of people. Orchard and Shipman was a smaller company, it was about 150. But 150 is still a lot more than just yourself. So now it's me, I've got to get set up with a website, I've got to have a company, establish it, get it limited, VAT registered. I mean, you'll know all this as well,
Opening bank accounts, even just the smallest of things.
Absolutely.
We need a business bank account now. We
Insurance.
Need to, make the company limited, company's house, all the rest of it.
Terms and conditions. And then going into starting to take on employees, about a year into it, I started to take on employees. You've got a lot of legal responsibilities then. But what I decided at a very early stage was, I'm only really going to do the business development and the bidding side of it. And I'm going to get experts, and I got in people you'll know, Ian Pilbeam for the HR department. I got my own accountants. I got my everything, IT support, You name it. I didn't try and do it myself.
No, that's good. So you probably skipped a few steps then, because a lot of business owners, they will try and do all of that stuff themselves, and they try to do bookkeeping and accountancy, like you said, and try and do their own HR, which really, that's a tough gig for anybody. Never mind, you know, when you're trying to run a business as well. So no, that's good. I like the strategic thinking. I like that. I'm quite similar in like the way that I operate myself, so that's how I'm taking an interest in the way that you lay it out, which will be interesting to see how you've got the next 5 years maybe laid out towards the end of the episode. But no, that's good. So you just started sort of picking up clients and things like that then, and making a name for yourself?
I did, yeah. First client was a Glasgow-based heating company, no surprise, because I'd come from British Gas, and the guy that owned it says, I'll bring you in to start with. He says, I'll get you a bit cheaper because you're new in business.
Yep.
I says, that's okay for 3 months, but then I'll put my prices up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was quite firm with that. I landed a bit unlucky though, because there was a guy that I used to work fairly closely with in British Gas. Mm-hmm. He had left, and he'd set up as a consultant on the energy consultancy. Yeah. So not bidding, but energy. And he got a gig with one of the big water companies in England.
Yep.
And he realised they needed help with bidding.
Right.
And he said, I can introduce you to somebody here and they could bring you in. And they offered me full-time jobs and 5 days a week. And I said, no, just 2 days a week for 2 years. And that actually gave me the confidence to then go out and start hiring staff.
Because that gave you a sort of like an actual guaranteed sort of income of some sort. Because it can be difficult when you're maybe, I know like for us, we serve more the homeowner market. So like every year we start, however many million roofs we fitted the year before, you're back to zero again, and there's not always a repeat business, so it can be quite daunting to go, that's what we need to do to keep this amount of staff kind of busy. So that was quite a good wee cushion. Now it seemed to be that the network then as well, you've done really good with the networking, and it sounds as though you hold on to the network pretty well. So I can imagine like there's probably people from all them years ago that you can reach out to quite easily now. So no, that's good. So let's get into a wee bit of sort of tips and things like that. So any of our audience that's watching that's in the construction industry, what do they need to know about putting a good bid together, you know, making sure they are bid ready, you know, ready to tender? Let's kind of work our way through that a wee bit and see if we've got some, you know, inside secrets maybe for them.
Yeah, well, I think it starts off from being a well-run, well-organised business, no matter what size you are, even if you're quite small to start with. Making sure that you've got a website. I think your website is your shop window. People are going to then look there and see what it says there. It's good as well if on that website you've got some testimonials.
Yeah.
And of course, in the trades, there's various things like Trustpilot and things like that you're able to refer to as well. As the business gets a little bit bigger, it needs to think about things like ISOs. And I would particularly recommend to begin with the 9001, which is the quality management. The next two are probably the environment and the health and safety. But ISO for health and safety is great if you can get that.
Yeah.
But you can start off at, say, a lower stage like construction line or CHAS or safe contractor. And these are actually perfectly acceptable to the public sector.
Yeah.
You know, if they see you've got something like that.
Ultimately, it's without that, you've not really got a chance, to be honest, have you? Because if you haven't at least got that, then you're not showing sort of any level of competency. So it's that makes sense that's a good starting point. And also, I think sometimes in order to get these accreditations, then maybe shows like shines a torch on some of your weak areas, which is fine. Like that's fine as business owners, and you know, like having companies, people need to sometimes see that to go, right, here's the 3 to 5 things we might need to fix, and that'll allow us to get this accreditation, and then you move up through the gears. So it's so from what you're saying, it sounds as though get your business in good shape first. Like, don't try and go and pretend to be a good business, actually be one. So kind of correct the things that need corrected.
And also have relevant examples. So give you an example. Say you were, as you're a roofing company, and say you were going for a contract with the council or a social housing organisation, and you've not done one before.
Yeah.
So they are going to look for, well, what's a relevant example? So if you could say, well, actually, we work with some letting agents and we've worked with them for a couple of years. And during that time, we've done X number of jobs and here's what they're saying about us. Then they think, well, it's not quite the same, but it's very similar. And I think that relevance is very important. Getting your first contract is, particularly in the public sector, is not easy if you've not had one before. Once you get it though, and if you do a good job with it, that can then snowball for you.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of similar to just starting out in business as well. It's like it's a chicken and egg scenario. Like if you've not had a client before, then you can't really have a good testimonial. So you need people to sometimes take a wee chance on you. And how much is there of that? Would you say that so I'm maybe speaking about maybe a smaller business here that's maybe no yet doing bidding, because I think this would probably be a good audience to tap into, to give maybe them the confidence to say, look, you might be a small company, but you can become a big company and maybe you want to go after some of these contracts. Would the kind of local authorities and things like that and these sort of buyers as such, would they take a chance on smaller companies, or is it?
And there is a lot of ways in there. So if we start off with the website called Public Contracts Scotland, you register on that as a supplier. You make sure that it's set to what's called publish, so as the public sector can read it, read your supplier profile. They have something called quick quotes, which is anything under £50,000 in value, doesn't have to go through a full tender process. And they just pick a few organisations to issue a quick quote to. And then you get a smaller piece of work, but that then is evidence that you can use. You can also, as you'll be familiar with, operate as a subcontractor to bigger contractors. And again, if it's a type of work, and you just need to watch as well when you're bidding that you don't just go in then for a big contract and bid directly against them. Because you could shoot yourself in the foot there. But you're starting to create evidence, and at some point, and we deal at AM Bid with quite a few companies that reach this point, they no longer want to be a subcontractor. They want the contract in their own name. And that's maybe when you've built up the credibility and maybe built up your bank balance a wee bit as well, because you might get a wee decline if you're not getting some of the work from the main contractors before you start getting these contracts coming in.
No, that makes sense. And what about the sort of the pricing side of things? How would people that bidding tackle that side as well?
So I think understanding your market is really important. If you're thinking about the public sector, there's a few things to think about. So with the bid documents, you're wanting to find out how much work are you going to get. So is it a winner takes all? So are they only appointing one roofing company for all the council's housing roofing needs? Then that's going to then be a wee bit more known, because you can ask for statistics over the last few years, what's happened, in terms of spend levels, types of work. Is it programmed work where it's roof replacements? Or is it just the reactive for the storms and the wear and tear that kind of happen? So that kind of winner takes all bid, there's a lot more certainty around how much spend there's going to be. Of course, there'll be the occasional really bad winters that will create a lot of work in your line of business. Same if it was plumbers or things like that, joiners, etc. But other types of contracts are frameworks. And the framework, they might be appointing 4 suppliers and there's no guarantee of work. So that might be a bit harder to price. With the framework, you're maybe pricing for 4 years. And they might do mini competitions for big work packages. You can only then bid less than you've bid on the framework or the same. You can't bid more.
So you've
got to go in at a level that is acceptable, but not so high that it knocks you out, but not so low that you've nowhere to go if you want to be a bit more competitive further down the road. I think it's also recognising that in the early stages, you're maybe not going to know everything. So that's where getting cost consultants, AM Bid are bid writing. We can help on the bid writing side of it. We can also help with the drafting of tactical clarifications to the buyer to try and get as much information as we can.
Would that be on the basis of saying, right, well, you gave out a contract like this for the previous 5 years and you spent X, Y, and Z, is it likely to be the same again? And they'd maybe give a wee bit of additional information there.
And something that I learned when I was at British Gas, actually, because when I went there, I found they were losing a lot of the bids and losing them on price because they were quite high price, but also they were high quality. And what was happening was maybe the contract was being let to a contractor who would go in at a lower price, but actually they weren't delivered in the same quality. And the clients are often wanting the quality as well. So what I say to a bidder is, your own industry, where are all the places people cut corners? If they get this contract, what are they going to look to miss out? Hope doesn't get noticed, or look to charge extra for. And then I'll ask clarifications to the buyer for the avoidance of doubt. How is this going to be monitored? Or does our price need to include this? Do we get to charge extra under these circumstances? The buyer gives all the answers. And then what it does is it levels the playing field. It means the bidders are pricing closer together.
And this is public information as well, isn't it? So when you ask that question, that gets shared to everyone, so they then can't go and cut the corner as such.
No, because the questions and the answers become, in effect, part of the contract.
That's really interesting. That really is interesting.
But also getting cost consultants in. As I say, we're bid writing and tactical clarifications, but there are cost consultants out there, estimators, quantity surveyors, etc., who've got experience in the costing of bids, and they would be able to tell a bidder, do you know what, the market rates for that are round about these ballparks. This is where you need to be.
So see, for example, if a contract came up and a company wanted to bid for it, they came to yourselves and said, look, this is what we want to go for. What's the process then? Does that is the bidding part first, and then that gives you like sort of an opening to a door where you would get like the drawings for all of these projects, and then you're on to the cost consultant part, or does that all intertwine at the beginning?
So what happens is if they want our help on the bid writing and the kind of bid management side of it, they let us know, ideally as soon as the contract comes out. I had somebody recently phone me on a Tuesday. He says, can you do a bid for us? I says, when's it due? He says, Friday. I says, I'm a bid writer, I'm not a magician, So that was a no. Usually there's 4 weeks, sometimes a wee bit less, sometimes a bit more. So if they come to us ideally as early as possible in the process, we'll then give them a quotation to say, if you want our help, this is how much it'll cost for us to do the bid writing and bid management. We'll also say to them, are you experienced in this sector and in the pricing? And they might say, no, we're experienced in the private sector, but not so much the public sector. So, well, it might be time to get a cost consultant to help you with that side. Sometimes it's just hire somebody for a day just to look over your prices and give you that market intel. And then we hold a kick-off meeting with the bidder, and we work through what's needed, and we help them. Sometimes organisations don't understand how good they really are.
Because they're just probably, social media can be bad for this, but they look at everybody else and think, oh, it looks like they're doing great, and they're maybe not feeling like they're doing so much. But it's difficult to celebrate the wins when you're in it, I think, sometimes, because you're just in there trying to survive sometimes, and you maybe get a wee win, but you're kind of on to the next thing. So that's quite good. You maybe shine a light on the victories they've had as well, and the things they are doing right, as well as probably highlighting some of the points they maybe could be better.
But also things like, family-owned SME business, because the public sector, is encouraged by government, both UK and Scottish governments, to use SMEs as much as possible. I think the target is about 30% of the spend. And the spend across the UK is about 300 billion a year on public sector contracts. So highlighting that maybe it's a family-run SME business, is a great thing to highlight.
Yeah, from what you're saying, I think really I've picked up on a couple of things and I'm kind of joining the dots, but I would say, see the way that you said you started to embed and you went to the kind of, you got a good accountant in and you got in the good HR team and things like that. It sounds as though if someone is wanting to venture into this world, they probably need to try and get the experts around them first and maybe get the first kind of contract win or the first couple, and then maybe from there they might be able to eventually go out on their own. But it seems like you could end up in a bit of bother if you tried to almost DIY it, do you know?
And do you know what?
Or you could spend a lot of time, wasted time that you could have been putting into another area of business where you've tried to write a bid and you were just never going to have a chance.
Yeah, and with the greatest of respect, I'm not a roofer. You wouldn't want me up on your roofs. You'd want me writing your bids. And I think if people can stick to their knitting sometimes, it helps. One of the problems as well with a lot of organisations is they don't know what they don't know. So they're maybe only in this looking at a bid, that's only a small part of their year's activity. Whereas we're doing it all the time. We're also going to the public sector procurement conferences, like Procurex, say in Scotland, at the SEC every year. There's other public sector conferences as well. We're keeping ourselves up to date with the legislation as well. And because we're seeing bids across the UK in all different sectors, we're bringing, maybe you've got some questions in your bid on health and safety. Some bids we're doing are only about health and safety. So we can bring ideas to you as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's one of them things where, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, and there could be like a wee change in legislation that, somebody could just go and pour hours into something and they're maybe working off an old format, even if they have been doing bidding on their own. It's a lot to be said about having an expert there. What about yourself in terms of mentors and things like that then? So when you came away from British Gas and you were like the guy at the top of the tree as such, like I think reading between the lines, you must have had a couple of people above you, maybe CEOs or directors or different things that you maybe could have leaned on. Did you manage to get any sort of mentors or things like that when you were then there on your own?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple of people that I would especially call out. The first one's David Soul, the former rugby captain of Scotland, the last one to lift the Grand Slam trophy. It's a long time ago. But David Soul went on to have a highly successful career. He's got the School for CEOs, which is around leadership. And I brought David in as a non-executive director. That time we were only probably less than £500,000 turnover. So it was quite a big
jump at that time
for us to do that, to make that decision. But what it meant was David chaired a quarterly board meeting that we had, an annual strategy day, and we also got a monthly mentoring session as well. So had that in place for 3 years, and it really helped, the business growth, but also myself, David Gray, and some of the other senior people that I had within the business. Another person who's been great on the entrepreneurial side is Russell Dalgleish, a West Lothian man, Linlithgow based. But Russell, along with a lady called Christine Essence, started something called the Scottish Business Network. And that was to do with Scottish businesses getting work outside the borders of Scotland. Initially, first of all, in London. And they put on a monthly event in London to meet up with Scots who were based in London, who were looking to give work to Scottish-based companies. And that helped me. It helped me on the entrepreneurial side of things, but I also got quite a lot of new clients through that as well.
No, I like that. I like your attitude to sort of surrounding yourself with experts. That's why I was asking about the mentors, because I get the impression that you would quite easily just take on help and act like a bit of a sponge and absorb that knowledge. And I think that's a really sort of common theme with any sort of entrepreneurs that go on and do well. It's like there is probably the ones that they work really, really hard and they kind of keep their cards quite close to their chest, and they just work hard at it, and they probably do all right. But I always find the ones that do really, really well seem to have built a network around them, or a groupie of support around them that they can lean on, and sort of, I'm pretty sure you've been a mentor to other people as well, and that just comes sort of par for the course almost when you're kind of surrounding yourself with people like that. But no, I like that sort of
yeah. Do you know what, I'll tell you just one wee quick story on. There was a young guy based in London. He was about 21, and he got in touch with me about 5 years ago through LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. He says, I've worked out you, one of the people in the UK that knows the most about bidding. Can you be my mentor?
Brilliant.
And I said, just for your cheek, why not?
Yeah.
So good. I've been his mentor, less so now because he doesn't need it so much. Yeah. But in the early days, he actually went for a job that was about double the salary he was on.
Wow.
And greater responsibility. And they were interviewing him, and they said, well, we see you're confident, but you're taking quite a jump here.
Uh-huh.
How can you convince us that you can take that jump? He says, well, I've got this mentor, Andrew Morrison. Look him up. He says, and if I've got any problems, he'll help me.
Wow.
And they said, is it okay if we then get in touch with him and set up a meeting with him to find out whether he will help you? And they did that. They set up a Teams call for half an hour with me. And at the end of the day, the lad got the job. And I thought, good for him.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow. That really is brilliant. And fair play for just reaching out and seeing that. A lot of people's probably scared to ask for the help, but just shows you, that's the way to go. And so what's the sort of future then? What's happening now?
Well, as I mentioned earlier there, I have sold the business, and that was always part of my plan, was to set up a business that I would sell. And I got into a position a couple of years ago without even advertising the business, when I was starting to get people contacting me saying, we're interested in talking to you. Can we go into non-disclosures and things like that? And, with a view to buying your business. So I was in the position where I had 4 organisations actively courting me.
Wow.
And 3 made offers. So I had some criteria for the offers. Obviously, I had a price in mind, or an approximate ballpark price in mind. I wanted to work with an organisation that understood bidding. And I also wanted to work with an organisation who would look after my staff and my clients. Yeah. Because they were very important to me as well.
Yep.
So what I did was it was a company called Bidding Limited. And the main owners of it are a couple, Brendan and Sarah Fatchett.
Right.
They're based in Yorkshire, and the company is based in Leeds. And they're the company that I ended up selling to. Yeah. So I've been sold on the 30th of June. And in the contract and the sale agreement, I was to do 6 months full time, which I'm nearly finished with. And 3 months, 2 days a week, January to March. And in April to June, I'm to be contactable if they've got anything that they want to run past me. And then I exit from it, completely.
That's amazing. Well done.
And exiting completely is just a few months shy of the 10 years from the start of AM Bid.
Wow. That's the dream, is it no?
Well, it is. It is.
Yep. And then, and what now? Like, what kind of feelings and emotions does that bring then? Is it everything you hoped it would be, or are you now doing that entrepreneur thing where we go, right, what's the next thing?
A bit of both. So it is more or less what I thought it would be, and I'm happy to say I've maintained great relations with. Yeah,
I know you might not say the number as such, but see the number you began with. I know you've been strategic all the way. Was that the number you got in the end, or did the number change as you were moving? Or?
No, it was in the ballpark of what I wanted it to be, and in fact, Brendan, who purchased the company, he described it as, he says, you've got a little bit less than you wanted. He says, now I'm having to pay a bit more than I wanted. Yeah. He says, so it's probably a good deal for the two of us. And I think that's fair probably enough. Right. But I'm at the position now that I'm thinking about, I've decided I'm going to start another business. And
I'm not surprised, but I'm glad to hear it as well.
I'm going to do a third career which at 56 years of age, I think is quite ambitious, but I'm going to do it because I had the social housing career and then I had the bidding career. Bidding's now been nearly 20 years for me. So I'm ready for something else. And it was especially the sale process, preparing for it, leading up to it, that actually gave me the idea of a new business. So the new business is going to work with company owners, founders or chief execs, whatever, who are looking to sell their business. And I'm going to help them prepare for the sale. Because during the sale, there was a period of due diligence, lasted about 6 weeks, just prior to the final sale documents being signed. The buyers asked and their solicitors asked for over 600 documents.
Wow.
Now my business wasn't a large one. It's, I think 1.2 million turnover, employed about 10 or 11 people. Had been in business 8 and a bit years. You know, we've got about 60 main clients. You know, one office that's leased at WeWork in Edinburgh. So it wasn't a complex business, but there was all these documents you had to supply. And I thought, do you know what? I can actually do a job where I can help organisations prepare. So as they've got their ducks in a row, it's a bit like a bid actually. And then having their ducks in a row means that they're more attractive to buyers. The sale process can be quicker. The professional fees costs can be cheaper. And importantly, probably the sale price that's realised will end up being a bit higher because they're so well organised.
Nah, that's a great idea.
That's the next business.
I think, to be honest, you'll smash it, mate, like you've done with everything else. So we'll wrap up there. Thanks very much for coming on. That was brilliant. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Cheers,
Good
Jamie.
man.